Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Kwan, President of Creative Capital. I am so excited to welcome all of you, artists, industry experts, friends, and supporters, to Creative Capital Carnival 2024. Huge congratulations to our 2024 Creative Capital Awardees. This year, we awarded 50 innovative experimental projects in visual arts and film from a pool of thousands of compelling proposals. Today, you're going to see these projects in progress years before these works will premiere in museums, festivals, and exhibitions. Thank you so much to the artists for sharing your inspiring projects with us. As we face urgent human rights and climate crises, we desperately need new ideas, new voices, and new visions for the future. We believe uplifting artists is key to creating greater equity in the world. Since 1999, Creative Capital has championed freedom of expression by supporting groundbreaking artists creating new work. Our stellar alumni include giants in the arts, such as Jeffrey Gipson, Laura Poitras, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, Ralph Lemon, Du Yan, and 950 more astounding artists. We strive to help all artists build sustainable practices. Our new free Creative Capital curriculum has already served more than 13,000 artists in 91 countries, and our Artist Opportunities resource reaches 250,000 artists each year. Thank you all for watching, for supporting Creative Capital artists, and for supporting our work. Creative Capital raises every dollar we award to artists. Special thanks to our founding supporter, the Andy Warhol Foundation, our board of directors, our National Advisory Council, and all of our steadfast supporters, industry experts, reviewers, and partners. Here's how you can get involved. Connect to Creative Capital artists with a curator or residency opportunity. Amplify their work on social media. Register for the Creative Capital curriculum, or make a donation to sustain our vital programs. And now, enjoy the show.
Yes. The Lucille Lortel Award. Yes. Oh, hello. Hi, I'm Christina Wong, Guggenheim Fellow, Pulitzer Prize finalist in drama, Doris Duke artist, but most importantly, Creative Capital class of 2005, and a board member. That's right. I have oversight. And it is my pleasure to be here today, congratulating you all, the new class of grantees. And you know who else wants to congratulate you? Happy the cat would like to congratulate you. So welcome. We may have given away tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars this year, but we're still recording the intro on Zoom. So thank you for being here and congratulations. And let's see these projects.
This is a government file. It was produced by the Office of the Custodian of Enemy Property.
Japanese section.
This office was established in Vancouver after the bombing of Pearl Harbor when Japanese Canadians went from subjects of the British Empire to becoming enemy aliens. Tens of thousands of Japanese Canadians were interned, and their properties and possessions were seized.
$864 for goods sold at auction. $1,140 gear claim.
File 2304 is my great-grandfather's file. Like many Japanese Canadian families who endured this history, my family decided to leave this chapter in the past, move on, and look to the future. For my entire artistic career, I've been making work about found objects, letters, audio recordings, answering machine tapes.
But no.
I spent almost a decade researching and performing a documentary piece about a family that were complete strangers to me, yet I was avoidant of my own family history. likely because there wasn't a clear path through it.
Kamekichi, 2304. Fisherman, 67. Tirana, 4494. Farming, 52.
This document exists as a form of evidence when witness testimony has been hard to come by. Relying on this file as guide, I'll adapt this textual record into a feature-length live documentary exploring my family's experience, using video, 16mm, animation, sound, intimate family interviews,
the whole family could sing together.
performance, and a substantial photo archive. Electric Neon Clock asks, how can the artist use forensic practice and state records to undermine their original intention and use them to reconstruct the community and families that they were designed to dismantle?
Hello, my name is Chico MacMurtrie. I'm a Mexican-American artist, and I work in robotics, performance, and installation. After spending 2 decades developing inflatable robotic sculptures that live primarily through performance, I would now like to channel the aesthetic and political concerns of my robotic projects into a new practice of creating permanent sculptural forms. We will entail capturing the unique locomotion of my soft machines and encasing it in static sculpture. First, I'll construct an inflatable tool machine body out of high tensile fabric capable of assuming a wide range of human, animal, and insect-like positions. Then I'll select one of these positions to transfer the permanent sculptural form, encasing it in an environmentally friendly material such as high-fire clay, building a skin or shell around it to capture the shape. Once the material is dried and solid, I will deflate the tool machine and remove it from the inside, leaving a hollow form much like the skin that a reptile has shed. The resulting sculpture will evoke the terracotta statues of the Olmecs, Mayans, and Aztecs, and suggests the discovery of a buried civilization. This project intends to expand the dialogue around the role of nature and technology, with an emphasis on the need for a future that is more symbiotic in how it accommodates relationships between different kinds of humans and between humans and non-humans. The sculptures will naturally evoke empathy, as the dynamism of their movement and stillness will be mirrored and felt in the bones and musculature of their viewers. This experience of empathy and co-identification will suggest new lines of thought regarding contemporary conversations about social, environmental, and geopolitical divisions, particularly regarding U.S.-Mexican relations, which have formed the context of much of my work.
Exile is not a material thing, it is a spiritual thing, and all the corners of the earth are exactly the same, and anywhere one can dream is good, providing the place is obscure and the horizon is vast. Victor Hugo. My name is Billy Gerard Frank. I'm a multimedia artist and filmmaker based in New York, originally from the island of Grenada in the West Indies. Poetic of Relations, The Open Boat, is loosely based on the book Poetic of Relation by the French Caribbean writer and philosopher Edward Gipson. This 5-part metafilm takes poetic liberty at expanding on Gipson's elusive prose as a metaphor and framework to contest and reflect on current-day migrant experiences and the violence of displacement through the eyes of multiple characters, scenarios, and presentation. Filmed in Martinique, Africa, France, and England. A central tale in the narratives focuses on a period in Gipson's life, Paris in the 1960s, while still exiled from his natal home in Martinique for political reasons. The open boat is a preamble to Poetics of Relation, Glisson's philosophical imaginary essays, in which he redefines identity outside of its traditional boundaries, pushing against essentialist and reductionist notions of identity. Through this lens, Poetic of Relation, The Open Boat weaves together multiple errantry tales that illuminate the plight of desperate lives from different race and classes at a trajectory caught in the maelstrom of migration, survival, love, resistance, and global and political consternation. The main feature film is an experimental hybrid film that crosses the boundaries between fiction and non-fiction by synthesizing key elements of the art film, documentary, essay film, and experimental cinema, similar to my Venice Biennale films, Second Eulogy, Mind the Gap, and Palimpsest, Tales Spawn from Sea and Memories.
My name is Azza Siddique, and I am a sculpture and installation artist. The edifice of Terhaga is a mobile mortuary temple combining ancient Egyptian and Nubian mummification rituals with the desired principles of the reality TV show Pimp My Ride. This project will augment my late artist brother's beloved 1993 Nissan pickup truck into a mobile public sculpture that enacts lively funeral processions full of music, scents, candy-colored artworks, and hydraulics. Within the Muslim burial traditions of my family, I was not granted permission to wash, prepare, and pray over Tito's body as he would have wanted because I am a woman. This project is an amendment to that history. Using ancient mummification rituals and contemporary Islamic burial preparations, I will excavate, reassemble, mummify, and anoint Tito's truck in the same way that the dead body of a loved one is prepared for send-off into the afterlife. Proof of his existence is found within the wear and tear of the truck and the literal DNA of his that remains in its surfaces. I will extract his DNA from the interior in order to preserve the physical makeup of his living self. This project is the first installment of a series of works that combines ancient and future technologies to carry on the evolution of a life abruptly cut short through radical acts of public longing. While many imaginations of future worlds explores the possibilities of immortality, I'm more interested in exploring the futures of our collective death traditions.
Hi, my name is Avram Finkelstein. As a politically engaged queer artist, my practice has largely gravitated towards public spaces in an attempt to reflect questions of access. But spurred by readjustments to my own increasing disability, I've come to understand all social spaces as simultaneously accessible and restricted, and I'm reconsidering whether non-traditional art spaces render accessibility solely through publicness or by the ways they are instead shared. As a consequence, I'm interested in the activation of social space, and I'm working with translucent substrates presented as freestanding objects that perform representation as a process activated by observation. I've started to think of art spaces as experiential dance halls in which the viewer and the artist can switch places. These works are scrims through which to view one another, and they swing free. Some are drawn on both sides, intended to be alternate renderings, each one becoming a form of layered diptych. These works may be read as abstractions, but they are in fact depictions of microscopic cytology, our internal planetarium, articulating the body as a system in flux, memory as something solid in form, and the objectness of disability.
Saludos. My name is Loira. I live in Carolina, Puerto Rico with my 2 children. I'm a documentary filmmaker, a DJ, and today I would also say that I'm an artist in transition and expansion because my current work is pulling me into new terrain, specifically video installation work and writing. Thematically, all of my work is tied together by a desire to witness and behold the myriad ways that we as Black people give meaning to ourselves in the everyday. My practice is driven by a deep reverence for life and a dedication to the subtle, the intimate. My current project, Dissonant Maroons, is a 3-channel video installation that explores identity, race, history, and the contemporary in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean. There is a myth here. Dissonant Maroons confronts the pervasive denial of racism under the guise of racial mixing in our region. The project challenges the notion of a race-less society, highlighting the erasure of African and Indigenous history. By creating a temporal space that positions the Spanish-speaking Caribbean firmly in the heart of the Black Atlantic, this installation aims to offer new perspectives. The 3 channels will combine archival footage, evocative sequences of historic landmarks, and cinema verite that captures the ways in which we remain unapologetically Black despite national discourses that tell us otherwise. I look forward to meeting and learning from everyone. I am particularly eager to connect with folks interested in concepts of maroonage, those who have made a similar leap from film into contemporary art, and mothers juggling their creative practice and raising children.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Gallagher and I'm an experimental filmmaker and animator based in Central New York. I'm excited to tell you about my Creative Capital project, By All Your Memories, my first feature-length experimental documentary. This film is really an epic convergence of many different historical interests of mine. As a prison abolitionist who grew up in an Irish-American Catholic household, stories of Irish resistance to British imperialism and colonialism have always surrounded me. The Proclamation of the Irish Republic, a document read aloud at the start of the Easter Uprising that declared Ireland as free from British colonial rule, hangs in my parents' household to this day. A few years ago, I learned about Bobby Kennedy's assassination and the conviction of Palestinian Sirhan Sirhan. The assassination of a high-profile Irish-American politician and the quick and messy conviction of a Palestinian man motivated me to examine the historical relationship between Palestine and Ireland and their legacies of solidarity. As I learned more about the contemporary organizing work being done to free Sirhan Sirhan from prison, I became increasingly invested in wanting to also explore abolitionist histories among the Irish, as well as prison abolitionist futures being fought for in America today. The main questions my film explores include: what can transnational solidarity concretely look like? Why do Ireland and Palestine have such a strong history of solidarity? Why and how did many of the earliest Irish immigrants coming to America abandon their former radical anti-colonial politics? Why is Sirhan still imprisoned, and what would it take for him to be free? What could the abolition of prisons make space for in a new world? And finally, what can we learn today from the powerful, renewed international organizing for a free Palestine?
My Creative Capital project is called Melting of Columbia. It's an investigation of a historical scene from the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893, which was the 400 years celebration of Columbus's journey. They had a lot of different sideshow acts, and inside of what they would call a Indian museum, people would pay like a dime to come see this collection of stolen artifacts that were on display. So their show-stopping sort of like object that they had was what they called a mummified Indian papoose. It was their main moneymaker. The project sort of developed out of, moving through the gore and horror of this scene and proposing this narrative with the same symbols to be reimagined, to have a different outcome. It's a performative action in which I've constructed another chocolate, Venus de Milo, made of white chocolate, clothing her in Columbia's hat and sash that will go over the top of a reciprocating heating coil, and on the tip of that coil will be a gold baby. Some brothers of mine and other folks are going to sing a very specific ceremonial song and flip the battery on, and that melts the chocolate from the inside out and reveals a gold baby inside a cradle board as like a new seed, a new beginning in this precious metal. This baby, I feel like I can see it sometimes. Like it's really close. There is sort of this ancestral memory or story that feels like it needs to be reimagined.
Hi, I'm Şerife Wong, and I'm an artist, and for the past 7 years, my work Icarus Salon has been challenging the dominant narratives surrounding artificial intelligence by bridging conceptual art with the political economy of AI. My creative capital project, Blood Quantum, is a transmedia artwork on the connection between blood quantum policy in Hawaii and the epistemic injustice of AI. The Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1921 based eligibility for cheap land leases on a 50% Hawaiian blood quantum, a rule lobbied by sugar plantations to limit native land ownership. This has divided Hawaiians since and gradually dispossessed people from claiming their land and identity. 100 years later, it still continues. Today, digital sugar companies control what kinds of knowledge matter in their systems. Weird experts market a lot of nonsense about AI, but in reality, it consolidates power in the hands of a few. They get to decide how you are made legible to machines. For what purpose? It leads only to greater extraction of resources and power over others. My dad is 91, so he remembers when there was only 3 hotels on Waikiki. He moved away, as many do, and I've never lived in Hawaii. My family has had a farm in Waimanalo for 6 generations, but the future is precarious. I'm interviewing them, researchers and activists, and documenting my journey to discover my roots and trying to prove my ancestry through the current bureaucratic system. I'm situating expansive ways of knowing as valid knowledge systems that resist the reductionist ways of AI. I'm going to be making art installations locally in Hawaii and on a website, and hosting events to connect artists, locals, and researchers to build solidarity between communities working on AI and data sovereignty globally. I'm looking for more partners. If you believe You should decide who you are and not big tech. This is an invitation to join me.
I'm Leah Rochelle Gipson. I am a filmmaker and a multidisciplinary artist. My project is Staring at the Dark, a documentary film about Black ancestral and contemporary landscapes.
The ideas for this film developed during the period of the pandemic lockdowns when I was living in my hometown, which is Panama City, Florida. My family's from this historic African-American neighborhood known as Bay Harbor in a small city in the Gulf South. When I left Chicago, I was already working on community art projects that dealt with the racial geography of the city, politicized grief, and collective memory. I was collaborating with families and people who were impacted by multiple forms of violence to research and document forms of care that were local to these specific communities. As I continued to do this work in Chicago, I was beginning to see these structural parallels between there and my hometown, and I started thinking about migration and human disasters from slavery to climate change. When I was living in my childhood home, we were lucky to have all of these photos and home videos that my family had inherited and managed to hold on to. But when we went outside, the people and places, the nature in these photos were gone. This was an experience that only people who were living here and people who'd lived through an environmental disaster could actually imagine. And it had already been over a year since the hurricane hit, but this area looked the way it did almost immediately after the storm. The world is in lockdown, and I was asking, how is this small aging community going to survive after a Category 5 hurricane, plus a pandemic, plus these long political realities that had already changed the landscape over the last 100 years. Meanwhile, the ongoing acts of racial and gender violence were happening in a very public way, and it felt like we were witnessing our own disappearance in every way possible. It was that feeling that created this documentary. So we are building a community archive around 6 historic sites in the Bay Harbor community, and the film is our way of documenting that process. How do we rebuild? What does it mean spiritually and materially to practice future casting in the age of climate catastrophe?
Yat e shike do shedene, sheye nanaba Chacon yeneshne, todechi ineshle, nakaidone e bashichin kiani dashiche, nakaidone e dashanale, at ego dene atsa nishle. My name is Nanaba Chacon. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Navajo Nation. For Dene, being connected to the landscape is central to our belief system, creation stories, and connection to our ancestors. We are tied to the landscape through this, and the landscape is tied to us. In 1957, a coal lease was permitted, allowing for mining to take place on the Navajo Nation. In years following, 4 mines were created, beginning unrecoverable acts of resource colonization. In 2020, the closure of these coal mines on the Navajo Nation have left industrial blight and an environmental scar on the land. I address this sordid history through my project with Creative Capital titled Our Gods Walk Among Us, a public art sculpture on the Navajo Nation that will embed a low-powered FM radio transmitter and broadcast expressions of well-intentions by the community to be transmitted across the landscape. This project acknowledges design parallels of electrical transmission towers and abstract representations of Dene deities used in sand paintings, opening conversations about energy and land exploitation on the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation Museum will be a partner in this project, housing the sculpture and acting as a central meeting place to host Dene community members. An additional partner is Chacon, who will be building the transmitter that will be embedded into the sculpture. I view this piece as an intervention on landscape, a way to push back or reclaim our environments, reclaiming land and symbols through action and intention, leaving a repercussion rooted in Hojo, our principles of harmony. Thank you. Ahyahat.
Hello, my name is Anocha Suwishakonpong. I'm a filmmaker. I make films about the socio-political history of Thailand. In 2010, there was a huge protest in Bangkok. The protesters were calling for basic democratic reform. The government responded by imposing martial law, which allowed the military to use live ammunition on protesters. It resulted in 90 deaths and over 1,000 injuries. Since then, the families of the victims have been calling for the government to hold an open public trial, but the military insisted that since the people who were being charged were army officers, this should be held behind closed doors. For over a decade, survivors and families of the victims have been working with human rights lawyers to demand a public civic trial. I realized that we do not need to wait for the government. As filmmakers, we can hold our own trial. This project is a fictional film that depicts this trial. However, we are not casting actors or writing dialogue. We are inviting the surviving victims and witnesses to give testimony in their own words. Although the trial taking place in the film will have no legal bearing, I hope it will be the catalyst for the public prosecutor to take action. And while we wait for the real trial to begin, the voices of these people will be heard loud and clear.
Hello, this is a prepaid debit call from
Stu.
a prisoner at the Michigan Department of Corrections.
My name is Stephen Hibbler. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm currently serving a life sentence as a juvenile. I did 29 years and expect to be released this year. And entry point is like a lifeline. You know, it takes me in a position to, you know, help me develop my skills. It's allowing me to, it's providing me with a platform, not only to feel secure and to know I'm going to be in a comfortable environment, in a space where I can be creative, but entry point is also providing me with the opportunity to transfer the skills that I learned here into the larger society, which I think will be helpful.
I was a juvenile sentenced to life without parole. I spent almost 30 years in prison. All right, so this is where I keep my writings. Everything that you own in prison has to fit in a duffel bag or a footlocker. So I write small because of the limited space that we have. I have thousands of poems in a small stack of paper. Writing allowed me to express thoughts and ideas and emotions that generally in prison aren't allowed or encouraged. It really helped me get through my prison bit, past the bars, the parking lot, and the horizon.
The famous painting of the Raft of Medusa represents survivors of a wreck in July 1816. It was transporting, among other passengers, the new appointed French governor to Saint Louis of Senegal. France will soon move from commercial treaties to military occupation of West Africa. Between the Senegal River and the Atlantic Ocean lies a small island called Ndar by the local fishermen and traders who have lived here for a long time. As Europeans' presence in the island grows, slave and gum trades created a polarizing space where the Ndar and foreigners mingle, marry, and meet each other with equal respect, or so it seems. At that moment, Augustus Washington, daguerreotypist and entrepreneur, sailed with his wife and 2 children from the U.S. to West African nation of Liberia. A direct descendant of slaves, he is disillusioned with America's promise of freedom. He was one of the 16,000 black Americans who migrated in search for equality. Augustus visited Saint Louis of Senegal and is the first documented portrait photographer to open a studio in Senegal. That's when the film begins. Through the lives and looks of 3 different characters, we will witness life and challenges in this island. Augustus, an African-American visitor, Marie, a seigneur, a mixed-race woman married to a French colonial officer, and Ndate, the queen of the last standing kingdom of Senegal, the Kingdom of Wallo. To explore the black gaze, its possibilities and limitations, we will use what Saidiya Hartman calls critical fabulation, and the stories and histories recounted by the griot of West Africa.
William Cordova, born in Lima, Peru, is a U.S.-based cultural practitioner. Cordova's Creative Capital Project, Stand Up Next to a Mountain, The Unknown History of Latino Black Panther Party Members, is a video documentation illuminating the unknown history of Latino members of the Black Panther Party between the years 1966 and 1982. Whose public history and personal narratives remain completely unknown, but whose roles and contributions further add to the complexity of race, gender, ethnicity, and cultural paradigm. Cordova originally began his research on Latino, Asian, and Native American Panther members in 2005 when he was an artist in residence at the Studio Museum in Harlem. This project is unique in that it is the only document of Latino women and men who played a vital role as Black Panther Party members, struggling for human rights, equality, and power to the people.
Hi, my name is Erica Lord. I'm an interdisciplinary conceptual artist. I am Athabascan and Inupiaq, originally from Alaska, from the village of Nenana. I'm also Finnish, Swedish, English, and Japanese. And that mix or identity kind of plays into my work. The project, the codes we carry, first started with these baby belts or burden straps. I like looking at traditional objects and trying to think about how I might relate to them in my contemporary life. What would my burden be now? And the first thing that I thought of was diabetes. So the first belt that I made was my diabetes burden strap. The colors and patterns in the bead weavings come from microarray analysis tests. These tests that they do on either your DNA or your RNA, and the colors and patterns will help you determine whether or not you have a disease or a condition and how advanced it is. The diseases that I chose affect Native populations disproportionately. They are diseases or conditions that are preventable and could be treated early on if we actually had access to quality healthcare. That responsibility of continuing these traditional art practices of beading and weaving, carrying our culture, figuring out new ways of continually adapting them so that they are relevant to our life. That is a lot to carry, but we are doing it. I teach at the Institute of American Indian Arts. I've been very lucky to utilize students from the internship and apprenticeship program. It's exciting for them to be able to see something. I had a hand in that. Like, we created it together.
Whoa, that was amazing. And guess what? It's finally time to pee. That's right. It's intermission, everybody. And when you're done peeing and when you take your big purse, this is Christina Wong tip number 5, and take all the free snacks from the concession area, because you may have gotten a giant grant, but why not add some free snacks to it? You know what I'm saying? So I'm talking Raisinets, I'm talking popcorn. It's like supermarket sweep out there in the lobby. So don't leave. Don't go on. There's nothing out in the East Village. There's certainly no free snacks. So go get your snacks and come right back. And then we're going to meet the other classic grantees. Intermission.
My name is Rachel Rasa, and I'm an artist who works across all media, most recently for the Guggenheim, the Cistern in Houston, the Whitney Museum of American Art, and my solo show titled Scry at Magenta Plains. I've been working for about 6 years on this project that I'm so honored to receive a Creative Capital for. It regards taking radiant energy or waste energy from the surrounding air that a lot of Tesla's research was around. The reason for that is because I address autonomy so often in my work around technology. It's always been a little bit disturbing to me to not address the largest part of this connective tissue. We're completely enmeshed in the electrical grid. What I started looking into was this apocryphal story about what they're called spirit radios. And spirit radios were thought to be able to contact the dead. Part of what Tesla believed was that the purest form of electricity would give you the ability to make contact with the gods or make contact with aliens. I started looking into powering my own artwork and like sort of autonomous sculptures based off of this research. First, by pulling radiant Wi-Fi signals, just because we have so much in New York City. And so I first started making my prototypes out of fractal antennas to pull in even more RF to then convert to electricity. And so now 6 years has passed and there's a lot more research around this field. And so I'm very excited to get into it and have the opportunity to do so. And so thank you to Creative Capital and everybody else.
Hi everyone, my name is Carmen Amengual, and I am an Argentinian artist, researcher, and experimental filmmaker based in Los Angeles. My Creative Capital project, A Non-Coincidental Mirror, takes the form of an experimental documentary film and an installation centered around the inaugural and subsequent Third World Filmmakers meetings, which unfolded in Algiers in 1973 and in Buenos Aires in 1974. Convened under the auspices of the Algerian Ministry of Culture and of the Third World Research Institute at the University of Buenos Aires, these meetings were orchestrated by two Argentinians, the independent filmmaker Jorge Giannoni and the architect Susana Sichel. In these gatherings, political filmmakers from Latin America, Africa, and the MENA region converged to discuss their roles amidst the anti-colonial and decolonial struggles of the time. They strategized on how to produce films under oppressive political climates and forged agreements to bolster the production and dissemination of their films. Beyond its historical significance, this project is deeply personal to me. My mother, Malena Fernandez, an architect based in Algiers at that time, took part in the historic gathering and collaborated with Giannoni and Sichel on a documentary film aimed at inspiring and educating Latin American audiences about African anti-colonial movements. Her experience from that time were shared to me first as bedtime stories, and after she passed as a treasured archive of letters, photographs, and documents. Combined with my own historical research, oral testimonies, on-site explorations in Buenos Aires, Algiers, and Paris, where I'm also filming, and with a critical analysis of third cinema films and manifestos, this archive forms the foundation of a non-coincidental mirror, both the film and the installation. Filmed mainly in 16mm format, my project aims to create a memory of the Third World Filmmakers meetings and to reimagine the unrealized 1974 documentary film. Thank you.
Guilt is a sculptural installation animated by performance tours and olfactive objects through a late 21st century auction preview that imagines a collection of the fictional EOS 10 to the 15th power family. In anticipation of relocating into a luxury bunker, the family contracts an auction house to help them downsize. Addressing the audience as collectors, I would perform the auctioneer character who leads tours to a multi-story building that is transformed into a haunting cabinet of curiosities that houses hundreds of fictional luxurious artifacts, many of which are created from a process of virtual reality sculpting, 3D printing, and handcrafted to mimic porcelain, precious metals, and rare wood. Each collectible, ranging from rare perfumes, snuff boxes, ivory rifles, silk garments, bejeweled masks, and even a portfolio of spared bunkers and estates, altogether unveil how the quadrillionaires accrued wealth. The collection blurs fact and fiction to interrogate how the desire for luxury and power eclipsed painful histories of extraction, erasure, and violence in the name of empire building. A mock auction catalog details these histories in restrained yet diplomatic tones. As the performance draws to a close, I would facilitate audience reflections about grappling with unresolved histories of commerce and labor and its contemporary impacts of severe global inequalities. The hopes is that audience will bring empathy, solidarity, and care into the decision-making processes that shape our shared futures and possible survival. Going forward, I will continue researching to inspire the expanding collection, write the mock auction catalog, and become the auctioneer character. In order to bring this vision to life, help me identify and secure potential partner venues as well as producers that would love to present this multi-story performance installation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Colleen Thurston. I am a filmmaker, curator, and educator, and I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My project is developing a digital Indigenous American film archive to bring about awareness of our rich Indigenous film history and cataloging our on-screen narrative culture. Why do I think that we need this? As people living under colonization, we don't have a culture of material archives in the same way that settler colonists have collected and archived our material cultures. So as a result, we've lost much of our historical knowledge around films, as well as screening copies of films. There's several examples of that have come to light in the last few years. Lynn Riggs, A Day in Santa Fe, was one such film that was only recently restored and found. And Daughter of Dawn was another. It was lost for almost 100 years. So unless you really know how to search and access institutional archives, finding our film history is not necessarily easy. So the Indigenous Film Archive will eliminate this barrier to access and knowledge by creating an easily searchable wiki-type website with links to available historical films and information on them. I will also pay special focus to amateur cinema by offering digitization and preservation of analog Indigenous home movies and including these in the archive as well. This is an example of one such home movie that was recently digitized and will be part of the archive. So that's all. Thank you all so much.
I'm Chico, a third culture kid, a Black mother, a fairy, and a filmmaker. In this project, Beast, I am helping to heal my very traumatic birth story and fertility journey by delving into magic. What better way to show the terrors of being a Black woman trying to have a baby than creating a horror?
Despite several miscarriages and a dysfunctional relationship with her white partner, T, a Black woman in her 40s, desperately needs to have a child. On her journey towards motherhood, she's transported back to a fantasy world in her childhood where a beast with flesh-melting saliva is hell-bent on destroying all her babies and everything it comes into contact with.
What I'm most proud of my practice is how I use Black motherhood, my child, my dreams, being inspired by the 80s films of my childhood, like Never Ending Story, by Bjork's videos where she uses her Indigenous background, puppetry to create magical worlds. Fantasy in the West is seen as unreal and escapism, but in Indigenous cultures all around the world, the unseen, the other side, is actually more truthful than what we can see. So naturally, it's the place where I go to healing. I'm going to use puppets in a theatrical way that will then be enhanced by CGI, VFX, and special effects. So I actually intercut the fiction and the fantasy with documentary elements and also personal archive from my family of growing up around the world as a dark-skinned Black girl.
My name is Sofía Cordova, and I am an artist living and working between Puerto Rico and Oakland, California. My project, Mano de Obra, or The Hand of Work, will be a performance, video, and installation piece examining labor organizing from various positions, ranging from my father's history as union president in Puerto Rico to vignettes sourced from poetry and film. Set in the near future and in conversation with histories and fictional narratives of labor organizing in the Caribbean, the United States, and beyond, this work will employ absurdism to avoid telling a single linear narrative, opting instead for a multivocal telling of these processes. My interest in delving into the specific area of labor history has a personal origin. As mentioned, my father's work as a union president for the Air Traffic Controller Union PATCO and his firing after the 1980s FAA strikes in Puerto Rico. Mano de Obra will tell the story of labor from the perspective of black colonial subjects whose resistance is inherently double, against the bosses and against white colonialism, here both parts played by government and corporation. To expand on how that doubling is mirrored within ideological circles, historical examples and my father's story will interact with vignettes borrowed from poetry, such as workers' chapbooks, 10 scenes of intersectional organizing in, say, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, and film. A monochromatic red set will be created for the video and carry over as installation for the same. This set will take cues from the language of protest and worker art, along with references to the language of various workplaces themselves, from the airport to the factory. These will then be imbued with a similar sense of absurdism, dream logic, and poetry as with the video. This in order to avoid a predetermined vision of what labor unionizing and its processes were, are, and can be.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Russell Craig, and I am proud to say that I'm the 2024 Creative Capital Awardee. It's an honor and privilege to be a part of this community, and I propose to do an art exhibit entitled Lost Tribe, which will be dealing with the oppression of black people that's continuous from the prison system to white supremacist police and programming that's happening to the minds of black people, men, women, and children by way of movies, shows, and things of that nature. For example, I had one of my pieces right here, suspended in animation, and it's dealing with the bodies that was thrown overboard during the slave trade on the ships, and then also it can read as a man being hung. The orange represents the prison uniform, and so do the blues as well, from the prison that I did time in. I'm also systemically impacted, and basically that's what my work would represent.
I identify myself as an artist and builder and systems critic. I love installing and building things. I absolutely love building things when I can. That brings me a lot of joy and a lot of meaning to my life. My kitchen is absolutely awful and I can't reach anything. Its dysfunction inspired the piece of the Whitney. Accessibility is not just about ramps and elevators. It's about the inherent height and design of every single object built into existence. Building out an RV. It's a big part of my art practice. This was a piece that I wanted to create a built environment that was fully accessible and much more beautiful in order to show that accessibility does not have to look sterile and ugly and doesn't have to be expensive. There will be a stove and a 24-inch wide sink, and the refrigerator will be where it currently is at, and there will be a dinette right here. I hope that I'll be able to show this piece in the parking lot of Mocha one day, just so people can understand that building a built environment for everyone No sacrifices have to be made for beauty, form, or function. I think it's really important for everyone to really interrogate the world that they live in and not just think that because it was made this way, it was right. I can't make art from a different consciousness than the one that I have now. And this sort of ideology of ableism and of what is normal and what is not normal keeps us from creating any changes that would be necessary for all of us to thrive as a society. I wish disabled people were the ones who were developers and who organized and designed our cities, actually creating a world that's worth living in.
Hello, my name is Miatta Kawinzi, and I am an experimental filmmaker, multidisciplinary artist, and writer. My Creative Capital project is an experimental film called Lullabies for the Distanced. This film grows out of my own ongoing search for spaces of home, belonging, liberation, and safety for myself and for my kin. I tease out these journeys in relation to African diasporic histories and presences, landscapes of earth, mind, body, and spirit, drawing on my own story of cultural heritage spanning Liberia and West Africa, Kenya and East Africa, the southern United States, the Caribbean, and other geographies known and unknown. Some of the questions driving this project are: when, where, and how did people of African descent find and forge spaces of freedom to be and breathe fully and freely? How might we broaden the parameters of Pan-African discourse to more intentionally embrace queer and femme ways of being and relating? These kinds of questions will be explored through abstraction and poetics in the film. I see this also as a celebration of the cultural knowledge passed down lovingly through song within the African diaspora. It will be filmed and recorded across vast geographies of the diaspora, and its connective tissue will be the rhythm of reimagined lullabies, balms, to soothe the psyche, to suture that which has been severed, to soothe. I say, we give thanks.
Iguna. Land. The sacred mother from which we came. Hische, Stango. My name is Elisa Harkins. I'm Cherokee and Muskogee Creek. I'm Bear Clan, and my tribal town is Coweta. And I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, because of a historic U.S. Supreme Court decision, is recognized as being on the Cherokee, Osage, and Muskogee reservations. Land back. In 2022, I was invited to Angel Mounds to research who the original indigenous inhabitants were. While I was there, I learned that an excavation had taken place starting in 1939. Over 2.5 million artifacts were taken, as well as 700 ancestors. I was told that these bodies had been placed into a mass grave in a secret location. I also learned that the mounds had been a highly sophisticated sacred site positioned in alignment to view eclipses. While exploring the interpretive center, I couldn't help but notice the striking resemblance between the artifacts on display and the artwork of our Cherokee and Muskogee ancestors. In this documentary project, I will delve deeper into uncovering the identities of the original inhabitants of Angel Mounds. My mission is to rematriate not only the artifacts, but also the remains of 700 ancestors. Mamadou, thank you.
My name is Jackie Milad. I'm a visual artist living and working in Baltimore City. The experiences I've had growing up with an immigrant family really inspire the work I do today. As a child, I spent a lot of my weekends visiting museums and ancient Egyptian collections. Questions I asked back then are still relevant to me today. How do these antiquities locked away in this museum relate to my family here in the U.S. and in Egypt? And what is the modern history of this ancient object? For the past few years, I've been working through these questions in various ways, utilizing museum study rooms to draw artifacts in person, creating textile prints of those drawings and using them in my collages, learning the provenance and extraction history of the objects I engage with. I am currently in the research phase of my project Nosoi and Agnabi that focuses on ancient Egyptian shubti. Shubtis are doll-like effigies that were once inserted into the wrappings and tombs of deceased Egyptians. Their intended purpose was to reanimate and serve the dead in the afterlife. There are hundreds of thousands of shubtis out in the world, thanks to their small size, production volume, and the vast number of tombs opened over the course of nearly 2 centuries. For this reason, shubtis are the ultimate symbol of dispersed Egyptian heritage. I consider what I do in my collage painting as symbolically repatriating and gathering them back together. Over the course of 2 years, I will travel to museums across the UK and US to draw as many shubtis as I am able. Drawing artifacts in person allows me to create a connection with the object before me. My goal is to overwhelm the exhibition space with my work, a metaphor of the immense scale of our dispersed heritage. In the production phase of my project, I plan to make a suite of large-scale tapestries, sculptural installation, and a bilingual artist book. The book will contain writings by Egyptian Egyptologists and photo documentation of the shubtis I've drawn over the course of 2 years.
At 18 months old, my entire family was placed into foster care. And at that time, we were adopted by 2 Buddhist nuns who just came to America. And we spent my entire life raised in a Buddhist temple. And 3 weeks after my 18th birthday, I would be incarcerated and spend the next 10.5 years in prison.
Calling from this payphone. Your voice eases the pain, but it doesn't stay calm. Don't go away, that's what prison's made for. Made to break us both apart. Babe, I know your heart, but there's limits. If you gotta walk, then walk. Ain't no judgment on my end for real.
Home, man. My home.
And I know I got some
It's crazy, yo.
List of dirty deeds that don't end for real. But I'm a human still flawed. Never always right, but pain ain't always wrong. No, my mama tried, no, she loved me all along. All I got is you, you the reason I'm still strong for her.
But regardless of how well our foster parents try to raise us, we were still foster youth struggling to find our way.
I've spent a few Christmases, like, if not every year, every other year, going out and just finding Ma after we found out back in like 2014 at your place that Christmas was her birthday.
I'm finna make it all right. Now you fucking here. Swear to God, I'll make it right. Now you fucking here. Me.
Mm-hmm. Right about a 1 hour.
Right there, right there. Yep.
Yeah. Brown jacket, is that mine?
I don't know, but I have a feeling.
After spending 10.5 years in prison and coming home, I found my family in shambles. Happy birthday, man. And now I'm doing everything I can to bring them all back together.
But fuck them all, I said we go ahead and beat the odds. I said we fight, and we fight, till we fight them off. Till my release date changes, whether right or wrong. Took my paws in my cell, put them in the song. Yeah, fuck them all, said we go ahead and beat the odds.
What always strikes me about Antioch is how beautiful it is during sunset. Right now, the sun is setting, and the irony is not lost on me that 100 years ago, I would not have been able to stand on the street at night. My name is Christy Chan, and I'm the creator of the This Way In project. This Way In is inspired by stories of the underground tunnels secretly built by the early Chinese Americans in the 1870s. During its sundown era, Antioch's lawmakers believed they'd successfully confined Chinese Americans to their residences. However, underneath the streets, the Chinese community was enacting a nightly resistance. They built and traveled through a system of tunnels that secretly connected the community. This Way In is a research-driven public art project and intervention. My team of researchers and I are searching for fifth-generation California Chinese families and descendants of the tunnel builders. We will gather their families' stories of resistance and install an above-ground series of site-specific, outdoor, nighttime video projections marking the locations of the tunnels directly underneath for the first time. For the premiere, Asian Americans will be invited to gather at Table for 1,000, a 2-block-long traditional ancestral ghost feast table placed directly above the tunnel area, with chairs and place settings reserved for both the living Asian Americans and the spirits of the deceased tunnel builders. The dark is an uncomfortable place to go, but out of the dark comes light. Out of the buried corners, there are unexpected stories, connection, strength, resilience, a chance for unity, and powerful moments waiting to be found. Some stories want to be taken out of the dark.